Beneath the veil of Japan's ancient landscapes, where rivers curl like ribbons of glass through emerald valleys, and the sea hums a low, eternal hymn, there is a goddess whose presence is felt in every whisper of flowing water and every trembling note of music. She is called Benzaiten, though some murmur her name as Benten, in reverence and in desire. To speak of her is to speak of beauty in motion, of love draped in sound, of passion flowing like a current too strong to resist. The river carries her essence, the waves are her garments. The serpent that coils beneath the surface of the waters is both her shadow and her secret lover. Her spirit is inseparable from the things that move, ripple, and seduce. Those who listen carefully at night, when the moonlight silvers the surface of the lakes, swear they can hear her biwa, the elegant lute, strumming a melody that awakens longing in the marrow of the bones. To encounter Benzaiten is to be caught between divinity and temptation, between awe and surrender. From the beginning, her myth has been drenched in music. While Amaterasu rules with light and Susanoo with storms, Benzaiten reigns in the intimate realm of sound. She belongs not to the battlefield nor to the sky, but to the hidden chamber of the heart. A goddess of art and grace, she is the mistress of words, melodies, and every vibration that moves from silence into being. Yet beneath this refinement lies something more primal, a sensual force as liquid and dangerous as the rivers she inhabits. In the old shrines by the lakes, where carp scatter when the footsteps of pilgrims break the stillness, offerings are left for her. Coins, ribbons, poems, strands of hair, and whispered prayers, tokens of love and desire surrendered to the goddess who hears them all. Those who pray to Benzaiten are not merely seeking fortune or blessing, they are calling upon the power of beauty itself, the intoxication of sound, the sweet ache of longing. She listens, she answers, and in the shimmer of the waters, she reveals herself.
The atmosphere around her is always alive, fluid, and impossible to hold. Imagine a cave behind a waterfall, its entrance veiled by the endless curtain of rushing water. The air inside is heavy with mist, and the echo of droplets create a rhythm that beats against the chest like a hidden drum. In that space, half hidden, half revealed, Benzaiten dwells. She is the voice behind the cascade, the shimmer in the spray, the pulse within the silence. To approach her is to be soaked, body and soul, in a sensual baptism. She is a goddess of beauty, but her beauty is never still. It moves like water, like music, like the swaying of silk in a summer breeze. Her face glows with serenity, yet her eyes hold the depth of storms. Her hands cradle the biwa, fingers trailing its strings with a touch that seems to caress not only the instrument, but the hearts of all who hear. When she plays, it is not merely sound, it is seduction, it is poetry, it is revelation. Her music ripples across the world, entering through ears but sinking deep into flesh, into longing. Those who see her often describe her presence with serpentine imagery. Sometimes a great white serpent coils at her side, its scales glistening with wet light, its eyes fixed upon her with devotion. At other times, the serpent is her, an extension of her divine sensuality, a reminder that beauty can be both alluring and dangerous. For in every river there is a current that invites and a current that drowns. Benzai Ten embodies both. Her origin, too, carries the scent of movement across cultures. In whispers carried from India, where she once was Saraswati, she drifted eastward on the waves of Buddhism until she reached the shores of Japan. There she transformed, merging with the island's own spirit of waters and music, becoming something unique, something new. She is at once foreign and familiar, a goddess who has traveled, adapted, and seduced entire civilizations. This migration itself is sensual. Her myth, like her rivers, flowing across lands, reshaping, finding new beds to rest in.
When mortals encounter her, it is rarely in a blaze of light. Instead, it is in a tremor, in the breath that quickens when a song strikes too deep, in the way the body arches toward beauty, as if compelled by something beyond choice. She comes in intimacies, in the curve of a melody, in the shimmer of water over skin, in the sudden desire that blooms without warning. Benzaiten does not thunder down from the heavens. She enters softly, seductively, until resistance dissolves. The places sacred to her are never harsh. They are soft, wet, and resonant. Shrines on islands floating within lakes, sanctuaries by waterfalls, caverns where rivers hide their secrets. To step into such a place is to feel her nearness, to breathe her perfume, a fragrance that is at once delicate and consuming. Pilgrims often speak of hearing her voice carried on the spray, a murmur that could be mistaken for wind, but is filled with a warmth that touches the skin as if by unseen fingers. Water is her element, but not water alone. The serpent twines through her mythology as a constant companion. The serpent is desire, smooth, winding, inevitable. To speak of Benzaiten without the serpent is to miss the undercurrent of her essence. For while she enchants through beauty and music, she ensnares through passion. The serpent waits, coiled in shadow, reminding all who approach her that what flows sweetly can also constrict. Love is both pleasure and peril, and she embodies the full circle of both. The myth begins not in words, but in sensations. The hush of a river at dusk, the glint of moonlight over ripples, the resonance of a string plucked once, twice, thrice, until the body shivers. She is always just beyond reach, just beneath the surface, yet she pulls all eyes, all ears, all hearts toward her. There is no story of Benzaiten that is not also the story of longing, for she exists where desire begins.
It is said that lovers who vow themselves to each other before her shrines are bound not only by fidelity, but by the river's current itself. Their lives will flow together, whether smoothly or turbulently, until the end. Artists who pray to her find their creations touched by a brilliance that feels not entirely their own, as if her fingers guided theirs. And wanderers who meet her gaze, whether in dream, in vision, or in the shimmer of moonlit waters, find themselves unable to forget, forever haunted by a beauty too fluid to possess. Thus the myth opens, with the river as her mirror, the serpent as her shadow, and the biwa as her voice. To know Benzaiten is not to know a goddess of distant heavens, but one who sits beside the listener, close enough to feel her breath, close enough that the shimmer of her presence lingers even after she vanishes. And so, before the story truly begins, before desire blooms into conflict, before the goddess reveals the full power of her passion, we are left with an image, a woman of impossible grace, seated beside a flowing stream, her biwa resting upon her lap, her hair glistening as though woven from the waters themselves. She plucks a string. The note carries across the valley, slides into the heart, and leaves behind an ache that is equal parts pain and pleasure. This is Benzaiten. This is the myth as it begins, not in thunder, not in fire, but in the rippling murmur of water, in the shimmer of serpents, in the seduction of music. A goddess who is both art and desire, both beauty and danger. A goddess whose story must be entered slowly, the way one steps into a river, letting the current take hold, letting it draw you deeper, until resistance is no longer possible. For to listen to her is to surrender, and to surrender is to be reborn in her waters, to be carried by her song, to be touched by her shadow. Her myth does not simply begin, it flows, it seeps into the soul, and once it does, it never leaves. She emerges not as an idea, not as a distant abstraction, but as a figure so radiant that the heart trembles merely to imagine her. Benzaiten, the goddess of music, beauty, and the river's ceaseless flow, cannot be approached without surrendering something of oneself. She is the kind of presence that demands reverence, yet awakens desire. A divinity who does not remain in the unreachable heavens, but descends, sits by the waters, and allows her worshippers to feel her nearness. To gaze upon Benzaiten is to know a paradox, serenity veiling passion, silence trembling with song, divinity carried in human form. She wears no armor, no crown of iron. Her adornments are simpler yet more consuming, robes that shift with the colors of flowing water, shimmering white one moment, deep indigo the next, rippling with hidden light as though the rivers themselves are woven into her attire. Pearls glisten upon her neck, not as jewels, but as drops of dew clinging to her skin.
and in her hands rests the biwa, the lute whose strings carry her soul outward. The biwa itself is more than an instrument. It is her voice, her companion, her extension. The moment her fingers graze its strings, sound turns to enchantment. Mortals who have heard her play speak of it as though it were a lover's breath against their ear, delicate yet devastating, awakening emotions long buried. Each note bends, flows, and wraps around the listener until resistance vanishes. Her music is not performed, it is unveiled, as if each string pulled back the veil of the heart to expose longing. Yet it is not only her music that captivates. Her eyes, dark, luminous, fathomless, hold the weight of rivers. When she looks, she sees not merely bodies or faces, but the trembling desire that hides beneath. There is gentleness in her gaze, but also something dangerous, the quiet certainty that she could draw one nearer, nearer still until there is no way back. Her smile, when it appears, is never careless. It is a promise, a taste of bliss, an invitation to enter the flow of her world. Around her coils the serpent, sometimes seen as a dragon, sometimes a sleek, shining body of silver-white scales. It is her shadow, her lover, her guardian, her reflection. No single word can capture what the serpent is, for it is both companion and metaphor. Where Benzaiten embodies grace, the serpent embodies hunger. Where she flows like music, the serpent curls like desire. They are two parts of the same force, beauty that draws and passion that binds.
The serpent does not sing, but its presence hums like a low vibration beneath her melody. Its body moves with the same fluidity as water, endless and inevitable. When it coils near her, one senses both intimacy and danger, the way a river can soothe but also drown. Some say the serpent is her lover, bound to her in eternal devotion. Others claim it is the embodiment of her own hidden passion, the side of her that cannot be contained within serenity. In truth, it is both, guardian and consort, reflection and shadow. When she plays the biwa, the serpent stirs, eyes gleaming with an intensity that mirrors her own. It is in this duality between goddess and serpent that Benzaiten's character deepens. She is not the untouchable goddess of the heavens. She is the goddess of longing, of beauty that invites approach, of power that can caress or consume. To worship her is to feel both safety and peril, both adoration and temptation. And then there are the mortals, fragile, yearning, endlessly drawn to her waters. Artists leave offerings of poems and songs, hoping she will guide their trembling hands. Lovers kneel before her shrines, whispering vows that they pray the goddess will seal in her flowing current. Wanderers come at night, seeking only the vision of her shadow reflected in the moonlit surface of the river, just to feel for one moment that they have been seen by her. Among mortals, she inspires not only art, but devotion that borders on madness. Some are content with the blessings she bestows, a sudden surge of inspiration, a melody whispered in dream, a glimpse of her radiant form. Others, however, are consumed. They long not only to worship, but to touch, to be touched. They become intoxicated with the idea of her, as if her beauty and her music are a flame, and they are moths circling closer and closer until the wings burn. There are stories of poets who drowned themselves in rivers after hearing her voice, unable to live with the ache it left behind. There are painters who filled entire walls with images of her face, only to find that none of them captured even a fraction of her presence. And there are lovers who, believing they had felt her breath upon their skin in dream, abandoned their lives to wander, following the rivers as though they could somehow find her again.
To the mortals, Benzaiten is both blessing and curse. She awakens beauty, but also hunger. She inspires, but also consumes. And this is the essence of her power. She is not merely adored, she is needed, craved, sought after in a way that transcends reason. In contrast to these fragile admirers, Benzaiten herself is the embodiment of freedom. She flows as rivers flow, never bound, never still. Where mortals cling, she releases. Where mortals ache with longing, she smiles with serenity. Her divinity is not cold, but it is untouchable, like music itself, felt deeply, yet impossible to seize. And yet, for all her freedom, the serpent binds her in intimacy, a reminder that even a goddess of rivers has depths that hold her fast. The interplay of these three, Benzaiten, the serpent, and mortals, forms the heart of her myth. She is the luminous center, radiant with music and beauty. The serpent is her shadow, the embodiment of desire that cannot be denied. Mortals are the ones caught between, torn by adoration and fragility, reaching upward to a goddess who is both within reach and infinitely beyond. To fall in love with Benzaiten is inevitable, for she is not merely a goddess who reigns from afar. She is present. She is intimate. She appears in the breath between words, in the trembling of strings, in the reflection of light upon moving water. She is beauty made flesh, art made sound, desire made divine, and once seen, once felt, she is never forgotten. Thus the characters stand before us, the goddess radiant and untouchable, the serpent coiled and inevitable, and the mortals trembling in the space between. A triad of beauty, desire, and fragility, woven into a myth that flows like a river, carrying all who enter deeper and deeper into its current. And as the story prepares to turn toward conflict, one truth lingers above all. To know Benzaiten is to fall in love with her, not as an option, but as a destiny. She is not simply admired, she is needed. She is not simply worshipped, she is desired. And it is in this desire that her myth finds its pulse, its breath, its irresistible flow.
The river moves as it always has, gliding, rippling, carrying moonlight upon its back. But within its current there is a hidden turbulence, an unrest that even the goddess cannot calm. Benzai Ten sits by the water's edge, her biwa resting upon her lap, her fingers hovering above the strings. She knows that every note she plucks will ripple outward, weaving enchantment over all who hear. She knows she was made for this, for beauty, for art, for the serene and unyielding flow of music that binds heaven and earth, and yet tonight her hand trembles. What does it mean for a goddess to tremble? She is not human. She is not bound to fragile flesh or the fleeting tides of desire, and yet the serpent coils beside her, gleaming in the dark, its eyes burning with a devotion that is too fierce, too intimate. When its body presses against her ankle, when its scales brush against her robes, she feels a quickening that is not divine serenity, but something far more dangerous, yearning. The serpent is always there, faithful, watching, waiting. It has never spoken, yet its silence speaks more than words ever could. In its gaze is a promise, surrender, passion, possession. The goddess who belongs to flowing rivers and distant melodies finds herself drawn again and again into that gaze. She wonders, what would it mean to surrender? To allow herself not only to inspire desire, but to feel it, to be consumed by it. This is her conflict, the river within her that churns against itself. She is meant to be music untainted, beauty refined, art made divine. Her worshippers come to her seeking inspiration, serenity, guidance. But her heart, if a goddess can be said to have such a thing, does not always wish to remain serene. Her heart longs to feel the same aching hunger she sees in the mortals who kneel at her shrines. It longs to abandon restraint, to be touched not as goddess, but as woman. And yet, how can she? To surrender would be to betray her divinity. To touch desire would be to abandon purity. She is the river, yes, but she is also the goddess of the river, ever flowing, never grasping, never drowning. She must be freedom itself, yet freedom does not mean absence of longing. It means longing without fulfillment, yearning without rest. And this is her torment. Her music becomes her confession. When she plucks the strings of her biwa, what emerges is no longer the pure, tranquil song of a goddess. It is trembling, aching, filled with shadows. Mortals who hear it kneel and weep, struck by a beauty they cannot name. They do not know that what they hear is her secret, her forbidden hunger woven into sound. Each note is a sigh, each chord a caress she cannot give, each melody the voice of a goddess who longs to be more than divine. The serpent listens too. It coils tighter, closer, its body curving along her side, its tongue flickering near her hand. She feels its presence like a lover waiting for permission. In the depths of its eyes, she sees not only devotion, but reflection, her own passion mirrored back at her. She knows that to yield would be to blur the line between goddess and mortal, between art and desire. But the temptation is unbearable. She recalls the mortals who kneel at her shrine, how they tremble with longing when they whisper their prayers,
how their eyes glow when they believe for a heartbeat that she has heard them. She envies them. They ache openly, shamelessly. They can desire without restraint, love without balance, weep without fear. But she must always be the river, flowing, shimmering, untouchable. The goddess envies the fragility of those who adore her. A story is told of a wandering musician who once came to her shrine, broken and desperate. He had no voice left, no strength to sing, only the aching love for the sound that once defined his life. He begged her for one last song, a melody that could restore him. She appeared to him in the shimmer of the water, her biwa glistening in her arms. She played, and the notes curled around his body like arms, like lips, like breath. He fell to his knees, weeping with gratitude, but when he reached for her, his hand touched only water. She vanished, leaving behind the ache of beauty never attained. He spent his final days wandering, haunted by that single song, until he vanished beside the river, some say taken by the serpent itself. Benzaiten remembers this. She remembers the look in his eyes, not the adoration, but the desperate need. And she wonders what it would be like to be the one who reaches, not the one forever reached for. To crave, not only to be craved for. To ache, not only to inspire aching. Her conflict deepens each night as the moon leans over the water. She plays, she sings, and each note is more sensual, more vulnerable, more trembling than the last. The serpent tightens its coils, pressing nearer, as if it too knows that her divinity is not as unshakable as it seems. There is a legend, whispered but never written, that one night she allowed the serpent to wrap its body around hers fully, to hold her as no mortal ever could. The river roared, the moon hid behind clouds, and her music that night was so fierce that the stars themselves quivered. None can say what truly happened. Some say she surrendered. Others say she resisted until dawn. But all agree that from that night forward, her songs carried a new depth, a rawness that mortals could not endure without tears. Thus the conflict of Benzaiten is revealed. She is the goddess of art, but her art trembles with desire. She is the goddess of beauty, but her beauty hides longing. She is the goddess of rivers, but within her is the storm. She longs to feel what mortals feel, to taste what mortals taste, to ache as they ache. But she fears what would be lost if she yields, the purity of her divinity, the serenity of her flow, the freedom of her river. This is the yearning that pulls at her heart, the forbidden love that sings through her strings, the passion that coils in the shadow of the serpent. It is not a love she can name, nor one she can flee. It is a current she cannot escape, for she herself is the river, and the river always flows toward the sea. The audience who listens to her story must feel it too, that ache, that trembling, that unbearable pull, for this is not a tale of distant gods who rule with thunder and flame. This is the tale of a goddess whose divinity is pierced by desire, who knows beauty yet longs for touch, who is worshipped yet envies those who worship. She is Benzaiten. She is divine serenity, but within her is the wound of passion. And it is in this tension, in this unspeakable yearning, that her myth begins to burn. The night is swollen with silence, but it is not empty. The river hums low beneath the stars, carrying its secret song through valleys of shadow. Mist curls upward like veils, wrapping the world in secrecy. And there, upon a smooth stone near the water's edge, sits Benzaiten, her biwa poised upon her lap. The serpent coils beside her, its scales shimmering with moonlight, its body restless, trembling with the tension of desire. Her fingers hover above the strings, not yet touching, as though even she is afraid of what will emerge if she dares to play tonight. The serpent presses closer, its tongue flickering against her wrist. She feels the heat of its body, the curve of its coils sliding against her skin. For an instant she closes her eyes, and within her there is no goddess, no shrine, no divinity. Only the throb of longing, heavy and undeniable. When she plucks the first note, it is not music, but a cry. The sound reverberates through the valley, a tremor of ache too raw to be contained. The serpent arches, its body lifting as if summoned by the vibration. She continues, each chord deeper, more urgent, as though her soul itself is breaking open through her hands. The river answers her, waves trembling with each note, the current surging faster, fiercer, as if the waters themselves are moved by her confession. The serpent encircles her now, its body winding around her waist, her arms, her thighs. It does not constrict, it embraces, it holds, it claims. Its scales are cool where the mist has kissed them, yet beneath the surface is heat, alive and throbbing. She leans back against its coils, still playing, each note louder, more desperate, more intoxicating. The music is no longer for the world. It is for the serpent, for herself, for the unbearable hunger that has lived in her silence for centuries. Her song swells into a crescendo. The strings vibrate as though aflame, each vibration a shiver racing through her body. She does not simply play, she surrenders. The melody is her voice, her sigh, her confession, her release. It is the music of rivers merging, of waves collapsing into one another, of flesh yearning for flesh. It is the music of beauty unbound, of desire unhidden.
The serpent's coils tighten, not with cruelty, but with inevitability. Its body presses along hers, shaping itself to her curves, sliding across the silk of her robes until she feels herself melting into its embrace. Her breath comes fast, ragged, mingling with the song that bursts from her biwa. She is goddess no longer, not in this moment. She is woman.
She is longing made flesh. She is the river surrendering to the sea. Around them, the world trembles. The trees lean as if listening. The stars quiver as though they too are caught in the pull of her music. Even the moon hides behind its veil of clouds, unable to bear witness to the intimacy below. The river rises, foam curling against the banks, as though drawn upward by the force of her surrender. Her song reaches its breaking point. The notes are not gentle now. They are fierce, insistent, trembling with release. Each stroke of the strings is a shudder, each vibration a kiss, each melody a union. The serpent's head lowers, its tongue brushing against her throat, its breath warm against her skin. She tilts her head back, exposing herself, surrendering not only her body but her essence. The music and the embrace are one. She is both the player and the played, the instrument and the song. In this instant, there is no boundary between goddess and serpent, between music and flesh, between river and sea. She is entwined, body to body, soul to soul, desire to desire. The serpent coils tighter, and her music rises higher, until it is impossible to know where the sound ends and the shiver begins. She is consumed, yet she is free. She is bound, yet she is infinite. The river overflows. The waters crash against stone, droplets flying into the air like shattered stars. The valley echoes with her music, a sound so raw, so sensual, that even the mortals sleeping miles away stir in their dreams, their bodies aching with a desire they cannot name. Lovers turn in their sleep, clutching each other tighter. Poets awake with tears on their cheeks. Painters lift trembling hands as though guided by unseen force. The world itself is shaken by the ecstasy of the goddess.
And in the heart of it all, Benzaten's surrender becomes revelation. She realizes that her music was never meant to be pure, untouched, restrained. It was always meant to ache, to burn, to seduce, to wound. Her beauty was never meant to remain distant. It was meant to entwine, to merge, to drown, and to resurrect. She is not diminished by her desire. She is expanded. She is not broken by her surrender. She is completed. Her final chord bursts into the night, echoing like thunder, then fades into silence. For a long moment, the only sound is the hiss of the serpent's breath, the rush of the swollen river, and her own heartbeat trembling like a drum against her ribs. She leans against the serpent's body, exhausted, radiant, her eyes closed, as though she has seen the face of something deeper than divinity. The serpent holds her, its eyes glowing with triumph and devotion. It has not conquered her, it has revealed her. She smiles faintly, her lips parted, as though still tasting the music that poured from her. And in that smile is both peace and promise. Peace in her release, promise in the knowledge that this surrender is not an end, but a beginning. The mist lifts slowly, the stars return, the moon peeks through its veil, the river calms, though its surface still shimmers with the memory of her ecstasy. The valley falls quiet again,
But the silence is no longer emptiness. It is full, pregnant, alive with the resonance of what has passed. Her music changes forever from that night forward. No longer serene and untouchable, it carries a rawness that pierces every heart. Mortals who hear her play weep not only for beauty, but for desire, for the ache of union, for the unbearable sweetness of surrender. Her songs become confessions of passion too vast for words, and in every note lies the echo of that night. The night she gave herself to the serpent, the night she became both goddess and woman, both music and flesh. This is the climax of her myth, the moment when longing overcame restraint, when the river burst its banks, when music ceased to be art and became touch, became kiss, became embrace. It is not merely a union of goddess and serpent. It is the union of serenity and passion, of art and desire, of divinity and mortality. It is the revelation that even beauty itself longs to be touched, and even rivers crave the sea. And those who listen, even now, when her songs echo through the shrines and waters, feel that same pull. They may not know the story, they may not see the serpent, but they feel the tremor, the ache, the ecstasy. They feel her surrender in their own bones, in their own longing. They too become part of her myth, swept into the current of her climax, carried by her song, trembling in the shadow of her embrace.
The river has calmed. Its waters, once swollen with the force of her passion, now glide smooth and silver beneath the gaze of the moon. The valley breathes again, as though it too has surrendered to sleep after trembling beneath the power of her music. All is quiet, all is still, and there, at the center of this softened world, rests Benzaiten. Her hair clings to her shoulders, damp with mist, her lips parted as though she still tastes the sweetness of the song she released. She leans against the serpent, her body glowing faintly with the memory of ecstasy, her eyes half closed in exhaustion and peace. The serpent watches her in silence, its coils loose now, no longer urgent, no longer demanding, only protective, only reverent. It has tasted her surrender, and in that surrender it has found union. Yet, as dawn approaches, the truth returns to her. She is still a goddess. She is still divine, and divinity demands distance. What she has given in the shadows of night cannot exist in the light of day. To mortals she must remain untouchable. To her worshippers she must remain serene, the radiant mistress of beauty and art. Her secret belongs only to the serpent, to the river, and to the silence of stars that bore witness. It is this concealment that aches most deeply. She has surrendered, yes. She has tasted passion, yes. But she cannot hold it. She cannot claim it. What burns within her must remain hidden, woven into her music, disguised as art, never spoken, never touched again. She has been fulfilled and yet left hungrier than before, a vessel of longing too vast to ever be filled. The serpent seems to understand. It does not demand again. It does not tighten its coils.
It simply lingers near her, a shadow, a guardian, a reminder of what has been shared. It will always be there, beneath the surface of the waters, watching, waiting. Its devotion is eternal, but its embrace is not meant for every night. Passion is not meant to be constant. It is meant to burn, to consume, to transform. And so it withdraws, sliding into the river's depths, leaving her alone upon the stone, the first rays of dawn brushing her skin.
She lifts her biwa once more. Her fingers graze the strings, and the sound that emerges is different from any she has ever played before. It is softer, deeper, threaded with memory. It is a melody that aches with fulfillment and loss, with sweetness and sorrow bound together. This is her gift to the world, not the sight of her surrender, not the intimacy of her embrace, but the echo of it woven into sound. Mortals who hear this music will never know the full truth, but they will feel it. They will feel the longing of a goddess, the passion she cannot show, the ecstasy she cannot confess. Thus her music becomes immortal. From that night onward, her songs are filled with a rawness that pierces all who hear. Painters, poets, and lovers alike find themselves unable to resist. They fall to their knees, they clutch their chests, they weep, they create, they burn with longing they do not understand. What they hear is not only beauty, what they hear is the truth, that even divinity desires, that even perfection longs, that even a goddess aches. In this way, her surrender becomes a gift. Mortals may never touch her skin or feel her breath, but they can feel the echo of her ecstasy in their own hearts. Her music plants yearning in their veins, a yearning that drives them to love more fiercely, to create more desperately, to live more vividly. She transforms her passion into inspiration, her loss into beauty, her secret into art. And yet, the haunting remains. For every melody that escapes her biwa carries both bliss and ache. Those who listen are never left whole. They are marked by her music, touched by the duality of fulfillment and emptiness as she herself is. Lovers who pledge their vows before her shrines find their unions deep and binding, but also shadowed by an unspoken melancholy. Artists who pray to her create masterpieces, but often at the cost of peace. To receive her gift is to be touched by both beauty and sorrow, for that is the truth of her being. In the quiet of dawn, Benzaiten smiles faintly, though her eyes glisten with unshed tears. She knows now that her role is not to live in passion, but to carry its echo, to let it flow outward into the world like rivers spilling into the sea. Her union with the serpent has not broken her divinity, it has deepened it. She has become more than the serene goddess of rivers. She has become the goddess of longing, of beauty sharpened by desire, of music that wounds even as it heals. Thus her myth takes on its bittersweet shape. She is remembered not for thunderous battles or radiant victories, but for the softness of her beauty, the trembling of her music, the haunting of her presence. She is the goddess who touches hearts not with power, but with yearning. She is the goddess whose love is always just beyond reach, whose embrace belongs to the river alone. The serpent remains her secret companion. Mortals see it sometimes, gliding beneath the surface of the waters near her shrines, its scales glinting faintly before vanishing. They whisper that it is her guardian, but some feel in their bones that it is more. It is her shadow, her lover, her reflection. It is the part of her that cannot be worshipped openly, but which lingers, waiting, always waiting in the depths. Every river, every stream, every trickling of water carries her voice now. Pilgrims who travel to her shrines swear they hear music in the currents, faint but irresistible. Sometimes it is sweet, sometimes it is aching, sometimes it is so tender that their knees give way. They leave the waters changed, carrying her longing within themselves. This is the outcome of her surrender. Not ruin, not shame, but transformation. She remains divine, radiant, untouchable. Yet within her music lies her secret, and within her worshippers lies the seed of her passion. She has poured her desire into the world, and it flows still, like rivers that never cease, like songs that echo beyond silence. And yet it is bittersweet, for though she has given, she has also lost. She has known ecstasy, but she cannot dwell within it. She has touched passion, but only once, only in shadows. She has transformed her longing into gifts for humanity, but the ache within her never vanishes. She is both fulfilled and unfulfilled, both whole and broken. She is the goddess of beauty, but her beauty is inseparable from sorrow. To know her story is to feel that haunting. It lingers like the aftertaste of wine, sweet but heavy. It clings like mist to the skin, cool and damp. It lives in the silence after music, in the pause where the heart still trembles, though the song has ended. This is Benzaten's outcome, a myth not of victory but of longing, not of possession but of surrender, not of fullness but of ache. She remains divine, radiant, untouchable, and yet in every ripple of water, in every trembling chord of music, in every lover's sigh, her secret flows.
The music fades, the river's voice softens, dwindling into a whisper, as though it carries its secrets back into the depths. Yet what lingers in the air is not silence. It is the memory of sound, the memory of longing, the memory of something too vast to belong only to a goddess. For in Benzaten's story we glimpse more than the tale of a divinity. We glimpse the truth of all desire,
Her myth is not simply about rivers or serpents, nor merely about music or beauty. It is about the flow of longing itself, the way passion rises like a flood, consumes, transforms, and then recedes, leaving behind both fulfillment and ache. This truth is universal. Desire is never still. It is a river, endlessly flowing, endlessly reshaping its banks, endlessly carrying us toward seas we cannot fully touch. To long is to live, and to live is to never be wholly satisfied. Benzaten embodies this truth. In her divine form, she is the perfection mortals dream of. In her secret surrender, she is the yearning they all share. She is the reminder that no matter how radiant the surface, beneath every calm lies a current of passion. Art, too, flows in this way. Like rivers, like desire, it is never fixed. A song is never just a song. It carries memory, ache, hunger, joy. A melody can wound and heal in the same breath, just as love can give ecstasy and sorrow together. Benzaten's biwa strings vibrate not only with divine music, but with human truth. Through her, mortals learn that art is not a luxury, but a mirror, a way of touching what cannot be spoken, a way of carrying desire without being destroyed by it. Her myth teaches that longing is not shame. Even divinity longs. Even beauty aches. Even the goddess of rivers and music must surrender to currents greater than herself. And in that surrender, she does not lose her divinity. She deepens it. Her passion makes her not less sacred, but more. This is why her presence lingers. Worshippers who kneel at her shrines feel not only awe, but intimacy, as though the goddess is not simply watching them, but confessing something to them. They feel chosen, marked by her music, invited to carry a fragment of her longing in their own lives. When they fall in love, when they ache for touch, when they burn with inspiration, they feel her whisper in their veins. This too is divine. This too is sacred.
And yet, it is always bittersweet, for desire, like water, can never be held forever. Lovers who clasp hands know that even in union there is fragility, the possibility of loss, the certainty that ecstasy cannot remain at its peak. Artists who touch inspiration know that the fire will flicker, that the masterpiece will never perfectly capture the vision. To live is to chase what can never be fully possessed. To love is to ache even in joy. To create is to hunger even in triumph. Benzaiten is the mirror of this eternal paradox. She shows us that fulfillment and emptiness are not opposites, but companions, that beauty is inseparable from sorrow, that passion is at once ecstasy and wound. In her myth, the serpent does not destroy her, nor does she abandon him. Instead, he becomes her shadow, her hidden reflection, her reminder that no beauty exists without desire. Their union is secret, but its echo lives in every ripple of her music. And so her story lingers, not as a neat ending, but as a haunting. Like the aftertaste of wine, her presence clings to the heart. Like the echo of a song, she remains after the last note. Listeners do not leave her myth unchanged. They carry it within themselves, just as rivers carry silt, just as music carries memory. Perhaps this is why her myth feels so intimate, so forbidden. To hear it is to glimpse the goddess not as distant or untouchable, but as vulnerable, aching, desiring. It feels as though we have entered her secret chamber, as though we have witnessed something not meant for mortal eyes. And yet, once seen, it cannot be forgotten. The knowledge burns too brightly. This is the gift of myth itself. Stories such as hers are not merely tales of gods and goddesses. They are mirrors. They reflect us, our longings, our fears, our hidden selves. In Benzaiten's story, we recognize our own rivers, our own serpents, our own music. We recognize the moments when we too have surrendered to something greater than ourselves, when desire has consumed us, when art or love has left us trembling. But myths also remind us that we are not alone in this. If even a goddess knows longing, if even divinity aches, then perhaps our own yearning is not a flaw, but a truth. Perhaps the ache itself is sacred. Perhaps the beauty of life is not in being fulfilled, but in forever reaching, forever flowing, forever desiring.
And so, as the story closes, the river still flows, the serpent still waits in the depths, the goddess still plucks her strings, her music threading through the currents of the world. We cannot hold her, we cannot touch her, but we can feel her. And in feeling her, we know ourselves more deeply. Desire, art, and love are rivers. They flow endlessly, sometimes calm, sometimes wild, always carrying us forward. We drink from them, we are carried by them, we are drowned by them, we are reborn by them. They can never be fully held, never be fully owned, never be fully satisfied. And yet they are the very waters that keep us alive. This is Benzaiten's truth. This is her gift. She teaches us that to long is not weakness, but holiness. That to ache is not emptiness, but abundance. That beauty without sorrow is shallow, and passion without fragility is false. In her story we glimpse the divine secret, that even gods are made whole not by perfection, but by desire. And so, when the last note fades, when the river quiets, when the serpent slips unseen into the depths, what remains is not emptiness, but resonance. We carry her music in our veins. We carry her longing in our breath. We carry her myth in the shadows of our hearts, where the divine and the human touch for just a moment, like water meeting skin, like sound trembling through silence. This is why her story lingers. This is why it haunts. This is why, once heard, it can never be forgotten. Because in her we see ourselves, and in ourselves we feel the touch of the goddess. And so the myth flows on like a river
that never ends.